A reading from Luke chapter 15, verses 11 to 32. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me.' So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, where he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off, and he went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it. And let us eat and celebrate, for this son of mine that was dead and is alive again, he was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him, but he answered his father, 'Listen, for all those years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me a young goat so I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then his father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.' This is the testimony from our ancestors of faith. Thanks be to God."
Please pray with me. God of love, be in my words, be in our listening, be in each one of our hearts to receive the wisdom you have for us this day. Amen. The story of the prodigal son is a very familiar one. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but just highlight that it points to the truth that no matter what we do, we cannot put ourselves outside of God's love. That's a very clear, explicit message in this parable. That the son who's gone off, has completely insulted and abandoned his father and goes off and then kind of gets himself into trouble and comes back, is welcomed like an honored guest and is just fully embraced by grace. But it ends problematically for us. If the story just ended with the party, we could all just be like, woo, right? But it doesn't end there, because there's another brother. And the other brother comes in and hears the party going on, and it's like, what's going down? And it's like, oh, there's a party for my brother who took off and was a jerk. And now he's getting a party. And the father comes out and invites the son in and extends that same grace, like, son, everything I've got is yours. You are fully embraced by my love, just as your brother is. Come on in and join the party. And that's where it ends. We don't know what the older son decides to do. That's Jesus' point. Jesus is leaving us with the question, what is he going to do? Because friends, that is the very question Jesus is asking us. What are we going to do? Are we going to choose to embrace this economy of grace that says no one gets left out, no one is ever outside of God's love, no matter what? Or are we going to cling to our notions that there are lines? There are lines you can't cross and come back from. That there are good people and bad people, in people and out people. Are we, when we feel like one of the in people and we want to keep others as out people, are we going to say yes to God's economy of grace that embraces absolutely everyone? That's the question posed to us today. And I, of course, am not going to answer that question, but I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story that I encountered when I was up in Whitehorse. And I actually asked permission of the young child in this story to share this story because I was so moved by their courage and by their grace. And so moved by, well, I'm just going to tell you the story and you'll see why I was moved. So there was a young child who was named Tristan. And Tristan was not a happy child. I spoke with Tristan's parents and they said, yeah, for the first 4 or 5 years, Tristan was just kind of morose, just seemed a little depressed. They were worried about Tristan. And Tristan had started school and things seemed to be getting worse. So Tristan's 5 years old, has begun kindergarten, and is not a happy camper. And the Christmas holidays roll around, and Grandma and Grandpa come to visit, and one of the things that they get into while there is they get up into the attic and they start going through all the stuff that's in the attic. And Tristan's up there in the attic and comes across a trunk and opens up the trunk, and in it is all of this fabulous, what I would call a tickle trunk. It's just got all these awesome clothes and fun dress-up stuff. And Tristan reaches in and pulls out this magnificent tutu and a tiara. And Tristan's eyes just get big. And he puts the tiara on his head and he pulls on the tutu and he goes running downstairs and pirouettes into the living room in front of Grandpa. And Grandpa says, oh, look, it's Tristina. And Tristan says, no, Grandpa, it's Tristana. And Grandpa said, oh, it's Tristana. And Tristana said, yes, and proceeded to dance around the house. Grandpa clued in very, very quickly to what was happening, as did Tristana's parents. And they sat Tristana down and they said, Tristana, are you a girl? And she said, yes, I am. Yes, I am. He said, okay, we need to make a phone call. And they phoned their minister. And they said, Tristan's a girl, and we need some help. So the minister came over, and they established a plan for what they were going to do when school started up again in January, and how they were going to introduce this to the teachers and to the school, who I'm happy to report were fabulous about the whole thing. But then the minister also said, okay, and so we want to make Tristana's reintroduction, I guess, into the congregation as smooth and as welcoming as possible. So the minister said, don't worry about this, I will handle it. And that they agreed that all questions would go to the minister. They wouldn't have everybody phoning the parents to get answers about what was happening, but it'd go to the minister. So the minister went home and phoned the Sunday school teachers and filled them in and said, can you please make an effort to introduce Tristana as Tristana, and if there are any questions, they can come to me, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and kind of laid the groundwork. But the minister was worried about one person, only one person. We'll call him Jack. Jack was like ex-military, and he'd been a lumberjack, and he'd kind of a rough and tumble kind of guy, and he was a sound guy. And he was also the guy who got the name tags made up for the congregation. And the minister was just a little bit concerned that Jack was somebody who spoke his mind quite freely, and often spoke his mind before really thinking through what he might be saying. And so the minister was quite concerned that Jack was going to say something hurtful to Tristana when Tristana showed up in a dress on Sunday. And so before the service, the minister went and spoke to Jack, who was there early, and said, Jack, so Tristan is now Tristana. And Tristana is a girl. Has always been a girl. We're only just discovering that now. Jack said, so you are saying that that little boy is a little girl? It's just, that's right. You're saying that Tristan is now going by Tristana? That's right. Jack thought about that for a minute and said, well, we're going to need to get that little girl a new name tag. We are constantly being invited into God's economy of grace. May we be people who can accept God's welcome of us, no matter where we've come from or what we've done. And may we be people who can extend that welcome and that acceptance to others so that everyone feels free to join the party. Amen. Friends, go out into the world to accept God's invitation to join the party. Whether you are the one being received home or whether you are the one being received to let go of whatever stops you from going in and welcoming others, know that you are blessed by God and that you are called to be a blessing to God's world. Amen. Amen.